Hello, and you're very welcome to the Howth Spirituality channel. Today we're lucky to have Mary Clavin. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Simon.
Thanks very much for agreeing to join us today. And Mary, if it's all right to start off by asking you to just tell us a bit about how you sort of define yourself in terms of being a religious or spiritual person.
I think that's a little bit difficult to define, but I suppose if I were to say spiritual, I have visions of that in my own head as being someone very off in the clouds, maybe a little bit, and I'm not that. So I'm a very practical person. So my religion is very much me and a faith and a trust in God. So now I'm practicing Catholic, and that is important to me. But I suppose I've never really put a tag on it. I believe. My mother said to me once, "Have you no faith?" And it really surprised me. So yeah, I have what I believe is a faith that's a trust.
A trust?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a trust in God. He's there. So I suppose I don't fear things hugely. Is that maybe?
Yeah, interesting. And so you have a trust in God, a trust that He's there.
Yeah.
And then you say you don't fear things. Is the lack of fear because of the trust?
Because of the trust, absolutely.
Can you explain that?
I suppose when thinking about doing this interview, I said, how would I describe myself? And even driving down here this evening, I just thought, why am I even doing this? But it's almost like there's something, some presence, some assurance that just says, this is fine, you're fine, and the right things, the right words will be there, the right message will be there. So I just leave those things to God. I guess it's got to be God. I don't always go around saying, "Oh, I'm thinking about God and I feel God beside me," but that's what it is when you have to put words on it.
Okay, so it sounds like some sort of reassurance. It's some sort of
yes, very much so.
Very much so.
Very much so. Yeah, I think so, and that's very comforting and very warm, I guess.
It certainly sounds comforting. And you describe it well just today, as you're coming here today, how you experienced that.
Yeah.
Mary, I wonder, would it be possible to track back in your life, maybe starting, if that makes sense, very early as a child? When do you think you first experienced that trust? Or was there some other sort of belief that came before that trust?
Well, I suppose I grew up in what I would call a very traditional Irish family, practicing Catholics. You went to Mass on Sunday, we said the rosary together. My parents were very much unquestioningly Catholic. They were both involved with St. Vincent de Paul. They went out and cared for people. My parents were always at home because I grew up on a farm, so my dad was always there. And my mum didn't work, so she was always there, and she might have gone out to meetings in the evening time. But so there was always, I suppose, home was a very safe place, and it was a place you were very assured of it being home. And so maybe there's where it started. And so it was almost like I absorbed that faith that they had, that belief. In those days you didn't question things, but as I went along I never felt the need to question it. It always seemed to be right. Maybe people would say I never had any huge disaster in my life, and that's why I've never questioned anything. But in secondary school then, went to a convent school, the Ursulines in Waterford, and that would have been obviously a very Catholic place as well. And I remember having we had a retreat each year, and we had a guy came along to give the retreat. I think there were 3 of them together, but this guy played the guitar and he was really groovy. In those, this was kind of different. This wasn't the nuns telling you what to do. They were quite modern, if you like, in this. And I just remember there was just this great sense of a presence. And the leader of that retreat, Larry was his name. He just seemed to create to me, the presence of what I consider Jesus was very strong. I don't particularly remember what he was talking about at the time, but I just remember a sense of absolute burning within my heart. And it was a most extraordinary feeling. And I feel that having experienced that I could never question, because I've had that experience and had several times since, but that as a teenager, I knew what it was to feel the presence of the Lord. And it's not that then turned me extra holy and that I prayed every minute of the day and I had 50 prayer books and read the Bible back to front. I didn't, but that presence was very real and remains very real. And the recall of it is very strong and again very comforting, very warm, very, very sure.
Okay, so that sounds like a key experience in terms of the development of your beliefs and sense of God.
Yeah.
And you're saying you're kind of absorbed stuff from home life, a sort of traditional Roman Catholic kind of household.
I think so, yeah, yes, definitely. And a love of nature, having grown up in the farm, around animals, around it. I mean, I would have known the names of the wildflowers and all the trees, could identify them by their leaves, and my father would have had a lot of sayings about nature, the way the clouds formed and what that meant, and the way the birds acted and what that meant, and when storms were coming or when there was going to be wind, or all these things. And I just had this great sense of there has to be a creator. How can you even think there's not a God who loves nature and who gives us nature? And I think, you can look to nature around you all the time in all its forms. And that's, to me, very much a sign of the presence of God. If you question in your mind, where is God? He's absolutely there beside you in a blade of grass or a flower or a bird or whatever.
So your sort of familiarity with nature and the amount of interaction you had with nature, your father talking as a farmer and as a lover of nature, talking to you about nature, sort of answered the question to you very simply where God is.
I think so. I don't know that he would ever have put it that way, but he would have just believed as well, I think that was it. And he was a very sensible man, and I think, just somehow it all fitted.
Okay, and for you yourself then, as a teenager, you had this experience at the retreat with a chap called Larry, who you mentioned, and you said it was like a burning sensation.
Yeah.
Could you maybe say a little bit more about that? What do you think was going on?
What was going on? That's hard to answer. I think Jesus was making himself felt, I suppose. He was saying, I'm here. And that's all that it needs to be. It's like, generally, most days if I'm passing the church, I would pop in, and I'm thinking of a million things because I do lots of voluntary work for all sorts of different things, and there's always things running through my head, and 3 daughters who are going places, and you're just always thinking. But I would go into the church and just say, I'm here, and like 2 seconds later my mind would be wrapped up in something else, but just to say I'm here and thank you, and there's a prayer I like which when we were in sixth year, we were asked to do a mass for preparing for the exams, and the priest that was in charge, and this was in Waterford Cathedral, and the priest that was in charge was a missionary priest, and he wanted to create some idea that God is with you when you study and you're not alone, type of thing. And so I can remember, I remember he taught us a prayer, and it's something that I use, and it's very short, but the prayer that we all know, Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, I placed all my trust in thee. And then he added, what else did you want to add to it? And I've always added, thank you, and help me. And so when I say the prayer, I kind of say, Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, I place all my trust in thee. Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, thank you. Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, help me. And I kind of say it just when I don't know what prayers to say, but that it's just there as a trust and a belief that I'm just handing over to that Jesus that burned inside me, so that I know I can just have that trust, I suppose. Faith, what word is the right word?
You mentioned if you were to ask where is God, turning to nature kind of helps answer that question for you. Have you ever gone through a period where maybe your trust hasn't been quite as definite or felt so certain?
I don't think so. Not in any way. I've probably gone through times where I haven't had time to think about it, and you just when working very hard or studying very hard, when I started working, I was studying for accountancy professional exams as well, and your life becomes very busy, and so there may have been times when I wasn't thinking about that presence. But if I ever got panicked about something, or got tense about an exam or whatever, then I'd just say, well, I've done my work and I leave the rest to God, to that person who's helping me, and things have been okay. So I've never walked away and said, damn you, something's gone wrong. Not really.
Okay, so you've never kind of not believed, but you have maybe been in a state of busyness and maybe not attended to it so much.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. What do you think of people who don't believe or who have other beliefs, other religions?
Well, I think I don't have the right to just say you're wrong, and I'd never say to anyone you're wrong. I know what I believe. I know that it's easy to question, and it's easy to knock, and it's easy to say. It's probably much harder to actually just believe. Certainly when huge disasters happen in the world and people say, how can God let that happen? And I don't know the answer to that. And all I can say is that for me, I'm just human, so I don't know. I don't know why they happen, but it doesn't make me say God made it happen. Because if we were to believe that God was vindictive and all powerful, then why wouldn't he be shooting us all the time? There's nature, and there's power, and there's evil, and for other people to not believe, I can understand. I don't try to make them believe. I think for me it was a personal experience, and so probably needs to be personal for people. I mean, when it comes to other religions and other faiths, well, in the end of the day, if we can be good people, God will work all that out at some point.
How does say, I don't know, the Bible or other holy works or writings, how important are those sort of things for you?
I think I would say I wish I read more, and I wish I made the time.
Why do you say that? Why would you want to read more?
Because I think there's a lot more there, and there are a lot of people I know who read a lot the Bible, and theologians and other writers, and read deeply, and they seem to find great nourishment and great depth in it all. And as I say, I lead a very busy life, really, because I feel that I should be giving. I volunteer in a number of ways on different things, and I feel I should give those my attention and my daughters and whatever. So I haven't made the time to read enough. I keep promising myself that next year will be quieter and I'll actually get there. I have read the Gospels briefly, but not in any depth, because studying them is so much more. There's great theologians who spend their lives on a single passage in the Bible, perhaps, that there's that much to be gained from them. Last year, I did an online course on just an introduction to our church and its history. And it's so vast. There's so much writing, there's so much reasoning behind all the books of the Bible, and why they're put together, and why they're put together in the way they're put together, etc. But I suppose I would start with the Gospels, because that's the story of Jesus. And Jesus is the one who has been human here on earth. And so that connection is the easiest to understand. And that connection, that promise, that story is a story of love, of God's love. And so when I talk with children at the family mass, to me, it always comes back to love. And children have a great capacity to understand love. So it's always an easy conversation, to have with them. The one verse of the Bible that sticks with me from years back, probably going right back to teenage years again, when I first read it, is from John. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God still, and trust in me. And that's where, I suppose, that sums up everything I do. I don't let my heart get troubled about it. I trust in God. And I love the fact that the word still, trust in God still, is there, because it kind of says, no matter what, trust in him still. Keep it, believe, trust. And so that's the two lines that I that I just live by. And so at some stage, when my children all leave home and when I have time to sit in the garden, I will get around to more reading, but not now.
So it sounds like it's been more of a priority to do some of the voluntary work you do, and to be a parent to your children and so on, to sort of actively do good, as you talked about earlier. But then you teach children in the family mass, and you mentioned those two lines, and it brings us back to where we started.
Yeah.
So trust really defines your
I guess
your
it does.
experience of God. It sounds like. I don't know, what do you think?
I think so. And I've never really examined it until Johnny asked me about speaking, and I said, who wants to listen to me? But when I think about it, I think it just sums up in, and whether that word is faith or trust or belief, or it's all of those. Very much God, the Creator, Jesus, my friend, and the Spirit as my helper if I need something. So, and I just believe.
Okay.
I don't know, how can you kind of make anybody believe that or force it on them? I can't. But I would wish it for anyone. You know, that sense of presence, that sense of a moment when Jesus really burns within you is extraordinary. And I would wish it for everyone. I really would.
Okay, well, Mary, can I just say thanks very much for sharing that with us?
You're welcome.
It was really interesting to hear. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.